Hey everyone, Scotty Norris here. Hope you're all going well in lockdown, and today I bring you another video. This time I'm going to focus on vRealize 8.1, which just dropped a couple of weeks back. I've been knee deep in setting a lot of customers up, especially for this COVID-19, to rapidly stand up capability. And I thought, look, let's run down, I guess, what I won't mention everything in 8.1 because there is a lot of stuff, bug fixes and other things, and there is quite a few features. But really the ones that I think that stand out that make it a lot more usable than 8, and obviously bring back a lot of parity to 8.x that was available in 7.x. Now, unfortunately, as with a lot of new, I guess, or revamped products, it's that old story of 10 steps forward, 2 steps back. So we gained a lot of functionality moving to 8, especially a lot of a new way to if you were to do a cloud management platform nowadays, what would it look like? Trying to do things the best, most scalable way, and obviously some features dropped off there. We gained a lot of features, but some that we all know and love, and a lot of organizations have depended on over the years aren't there. So a lot of that capability came back in 8.1. So let's have a quick look here. Now there was, I guess, what's up? So integrations, probably the first thing they'll cover. So the integrations that were added, the only two that were added was Ansible Tower support and Red Hat OpenShift. So obviously that Ansible Tower, there's not that many organizations that run Ansible Tower. Most use Ansible open source, but the option is now there for those who have already invested in Ansible Tower, and also for those who have invested in OpenShift. So we can integrate with them. Now there's been a lot of improvements on the Active Directory integration as well, which is great. Just offers a bit more granular control over computer placement, etc. Now let's have a look at Kubernetes. So obviously with the drop of vSphere 7, it's got now project-specific support under supervisor clusters. So we can add in our project-specific clusters in here, and we can obviously control and create namespaces and all the rest in there as well, allowing us to be able to provision and consume and administer that Kubernetes environment just like any other cloud endpoint. All right, so another awesome thing, pricing cards. So pricing cards only supported for hybrid cloud, so that's any vSphere/VMC endpoint. Now there's already got linking capability, so if you look into your projects, and we'll look at my muck around project here, we've got pricing and we've got the month to date, right? This one I only just deployed that today. It hasn't picked up the price yet because that runs once every 24 hours from vRops. It'll collect that, but it's had that integration already. What this allows us to do is modify it. So I've been to a lot of organizations, a lot of customers, and they've wanted to add their own percentage or their own pricing over the top of what they have to pay, and that's to cover a range of things, right? But under this, the pricing cards is I'll show you, we can either do this against projects or cloud zones. Now I would probably recommend, I haven't obviously used this too much in the wild, but I'd recommend projects to be used on. Cloud zones are too broad. Projects can be can be anything. They could be a project, it could be a team, they could be an app. It's just a logical grouping, so it makes sense that you could be able to do this, right? Be able to offer that those different prices per projects depending on what it is, rather than just a blanket over an entire cloud zone. So it just gives you a bit more granular control that way, especially for those organizations that are sort of like a service provider or cloud provider for their smaller customers as well. So I've got the default card here that I created. So this is like a catch-all capability. And we can see here, if we look at the pricing, is that we can come into here and we can either use the cost. So this will be the cost that it picks up from vRops. it will go, that's a factor of 1. So that's just a pass through. I'm not adding anything onto it. If I was to do a factor of 1.5, that would be saying I want to do 150% essentially. So I want to add 50% of that base cost on top of the total cost for CPU. So 0.1, and it actually gives you a little thing here. You can see a nice little explanation, and a rate is obviously a rate. Now what's really cool here is we can do hourly, daily, weekly, monthly charges per CPU, memory and storage, and you can do always, so whether it's turned on or turned off, as soon as it's deployed you start charging for it, or you only want to charge for it when it's powered on, or it must be powered on at least once, right? So these are really, really cool options, and I know a lot of organizations have been trying to get this capability right at themselves, whatever it took, and it's always been fairly complicated. So it's really good to see that this is in the product now. Guest OSs, so we can charge per OS, and again, this can be a reoccurring one time. It can be a rate factor as well. It can be a recurring. I'm charging $1 a day here, but again, you could do hour, weekly, monthly, right? All depending on what your licensing costs are, because some people, everyone's got a different ELA, and they cost different amounts of money for each organization. It's not the same across all. We can charge based on tags. So this would be really cool if you had the drop down or a tag to say for Commvault or something like that, and you say yep, backup is true as a tag. I'm going to charge them for that, right? Or maybe based on the different tag, maybe they're in a particular backup policy, and that backup policy is based on a tag on the machine. I can then charge for that based on the policy, based on the service, whatever it might be that particular machine's getting. So when someone requests through the catalog that they want, high SLAs, then apply tags, and again, custom properties, it works the same way. Apply it to the machine, and it's going to be getting that rate based on that tag that you want, which is really, really cool. And again, it's very similar, reoccurring, one-time rate factor, hour, always, or whatever it might be, right? So you got a lot of choices there. And then we got overall charges, which is basically what are we going to put on top of everything that we've already put up here. This is one-time fee, maybe it's recurring again. I reckon this is really, really cool, and a lot of organizations are going to get a lot of use out of this. So what it's also done, and this is sort of behind the scenes, I'm not going to go in and show this, is that you now can do multi-tenanted, so you can have multi-orgs. This is all set up through Lifecycle Manager, but now, yeah, it's fully multi-tenanted now. Before in 8.0 and 8.01, it was all a single organization or single tenant capability there. All right, so now we get on to some of the cooler stuff here. So if you look at the design canvas hasn't changed so much, but what you'd probably notice here is we've got 2 additional capabilities here. So custom resources, so they're back. So this is XAS, anything. So a custom resource at the end of the day is going to be a VRO resource. So if you know VRO is all like fully object orientated. Everything in there is an object or of a type. So for example, an AD user object in there is of type AD colon user, right? And I think group is AD colon user group. So everything, if it's got a plugin and it can be detected, and it's an object within VRO, then it can be added in here as a custom resource. That includes dynamic types or anything that you want, like literally anything. There's a huge range here, and these can all be custom resources that are then managed. Now what's really cool, and I actually really like this over what you could do in 7, is as part of the custom resource you have lifecycle actions. So you can start doing, okay, my create, my update, my destroy. These are the particular actions that I want to do. So an example might be that you've got to run a particular workflow to on the creation of an AD user to go and raise some CMDB tickets and other things. Cool, do that on create. You want to then disable that particular user or disable the password for that user in your IPAM on delete, then do that. You know, there's lots of different ways, lots of different options you could do here, right? Or you could just have nothing. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day. And then you got additional actions. So these are day 2 actions that we want to be able to run. So this is putting the day 2 actions straight onto the custom resource. So, you know, an example is obviously the AD user. Day 2 action might be to change password, might be to delete, might be to add to group. You know, it could be anything, right? Just using that AD user as a very simple example. But you know, it could be for example, using one of the plugins for NetApp, using the filer, and you want to offer file as a service. So you want to start, you know, you want to have as part of that, you want maybe extend storage, maybe back it up, you want to delete it, you want to create it, you maybe want to add permissions to it, whatever the day 2 actions might be. So you can add them all into here, which is awesome. And then you've got custom actions. Now, custom actions you can add to existing resources. So when we go to, if I went to, for example, this deployment here, this just test one I deployed earlier, it's on AWS. We can see I've got a bunch of actions here, add disk, all the rest of it. Now I could add my own in there now, which is really, really cool. There is obviously an AWS plugin for vRealize too, that you can leverage some of this capability, but you know, instead of add disk, maybe you want to increase the size of a disk. You know, maybe you want to be able to add a ad hoc backup or something equivalent. So you can start adding your own day 2 actions in here, so your end consumers can do more with the resources they've got. All right, so you can add anything to that, which is very, very cool. Go back to design, and then obviously within the blueprints you can now use those custom resources within your blueprints as well. So you can drag and drop XAS, and you can obviously drag and drop. I haven't actually got any of the resources, custom resources set up, so they don't appear in here, but you can see we've got Ansible Tower support in there now, which is cool. And now on to probably what I think is the biggest part of 8.1, and something that caught me by surprise. I wasn't expecting it, but it is very, very welcome. So this actually covers 2 areas because they're very closely linked. This is the Extensibility ABX as well as vRealize, right? So what was, I guess, one of the downsides, well, vRealize has been, you know, the top CMP that's out there. You know, vRealize, before that with vCenter Automation Center or VCAC, you know, it was a CMP before there was CMPs. You know, it hasn't had terribly much competition in the space over the years. And the problem with it was that you were limited to, if you wanted to extend the capability, you had to know JavaScript and vRealize. So that limited organizations' abilities to get, you know, good skill sets in, because they were, you know, they're typically trying to get server admins and other people in there, and you know, JavaScript wasn't up there on the skill sheets or the resumes, right? And I saw this across nearly every customer, that they struggled to get the skill sets they required. 8 obviously brought in the capability to have Python and Node.js. So Python definitely hugely more popular in especially the server admin space. And there's a lot more resources out there. So now you have the ability, and it had Node.js, but I'll just put that under JavaScript anyway, is that you now had, you know, you could use vRealize, JavaScript, Node.js and Python. So all of a sudden, you know, the resources available that you could leverage to now extend the capabilities was a lot greater. Now what they've done is probably added the one that just covers everything, right? And still today probably one of the mostly used in enterprise space, because most enterprise space is still predominantly Windows, and that is the ability to now have PowerShell as an ABX. So if we have a look at this, we've now got PowerShell. Now PowerShell will run in your on-prem FAS provider only at this point. I'm sure once Lambda and Azure have the same versions and everything is compatible across everything, we'll see it open up. Under VRA Cloud, you'll probably see this as beta at the moment, but it's actually launched in VRA 8, and that will run on-prem. Awesome. So we can now leverage the ton of IP that organizations have got out there, the ton of skill sets in PowerShell to be able to extend the capabilities of VRA. But not only that, is you don't need anymore the PowerShell hosts or scripting hosts that people had dotted around everywhere, right? You can just run it directly. And now that moves me on to VRO. So if we have a look at the new VRO, so let's have a look here under Orchestrator. Now, Orchestrator had a lot of changes in 8. You know, there's the Git integration, which is good, or better Git integration. As we can see there, Git repositories, Git history. But what I really love is if we have a look at this one, this is just a nothing one. But we have a look at schema. I want to drag a scriptable task onto there. I go to scripting, and lo and behold, I've got PowerShell, Python, Node.js, and JavaScript. So now all of a sudden, I've got the same capabilities in VRO. That's actually because it's using the internal FAS provider to execute these scripts. That's built into VRA, right? And I believe VRO needs to be licensed with VRA to get this capability. It's not available in the standalone, I don't think. So this is awesome, and this just isn't a scriptable task either. It's actually, if I just close that, it's actually within the actions as well. So if we have a look at our actions, I'll just choose a new one, doesn't really bother me. Choose a module, doesn't matter. Scripts, and again, I can choose the run times. So I can have PowerShell here as my scripts, and you can see it's the exact same syntax with the function handler to add in there. So this is awesome, right? I think out of all the changes, that having VRO run Python, Node.js, JavaScript, and PowerShell, as well as ABX run the same, you know, it's now just opened the doors and floodgates to a lot of skill sets that most organizations already have at their disposal, right? It's not, you know, you're covering all bases there. You can all of a sudden go from needing, you know, a single skill set to, you know, oh, I've got the capability to choose 4, right? And PowerShell I think is going to be probably the one of the more dominant, probably that and Python, but I think in where I see VRA being used the most, I think it's going to be PowerShell, to be honest. Cool. So that, you know, some people might not agree with me that that's the biggest thing, but I definitely think it is, and I think that's going to have the biggest impact across our organization, across organizations. So look, that's pretty much it. I'll just talk event topics. A lot more added in 8.1, which is awesome. I know I hated the limitation on networks event topics. There was very little. Like for example, there was load balancer deploy, but there wasn't load balancer delete. Now, a use case that I had was that I was tagging load balancers and instances in Wavefront so they could become drop downs for deployments within Wavefront dashboards. But I could clean up the compute on delete, but I couldn't clean up load balancer. So because I couldn't remove them, or that remove the tags out of Wavefront, they were still showing up in the dashboards. So that's been solved now. There is actually now specifically load balancer post removal as well as post provision, but we've got a bunch of Kubernetes ones in there as well. We've also got more network provisioning and network removal and all the rest of it. So we can actually start, you know, you could set static routes if you didn't support BGP or whatever the limitation with T might be. You could start setting static routes, you could be doing DNS, you could be doing a whole different lot of things, and you'd be able to clean up afterwards if you wanted to, right? Which is really, really cool. But yeah, so a lot of focus on networking for the event topics. So that, will move us on to Service Broker. Now, Service Broker hasn't gotten too much love. You know, it is the catalog. Haven't really put much effort into the catalog here, but what you'd probably notice straight away is they're now approvals, which is cool. Obviously got none there, but if we have a look at content definitions, we can actually see we've got approval policies now. So we can set approval policies. These approval policies can be based on all the actions, you know, create, power on, power off, all the day 2 actions. You can, you know, put all the usual approvals just like you could in 7. Now I do like, obviously, the deployment criteria. We can put together the policy that this applies to, whether it's a project, whether it's a particular deployment name, whether it's a user, whether, you know, you can do a lot of different things. No different here in approver mode, except for one, is that obviously we've got any and all, which is great, meaning that, you know, we can have a bunch of users in here. Any of them can approve, all of them must approve, fine, but it is missing one, and that's the auto approve. So under 7, I used to use that heavily, and I know a lot of organizations do. And because when you have end users wanting to you know, self-serve and provision their own stuff when they want, you don't want manual approvals. You want to remove as much of that as possible. Now, a typical approval that could be automatic, right, would be the capacity. So whether you go into Azure, AWS, vSphere, it doesn't matter. There's still capacity limits, whether it happens to be your soft limits or hard limits, as far as public cloud's concerned, that's on that particular subscription, or maybe it's the actual physical resources in your vSphere data center, right? You can check that, right? Whether you're hitting the API directly on the cloud, whether you're using vRops or something else, on a deployment, I can automatically go and check if there's enough capacity based on what is trying to be deployed and auto approve that. So I could do that in 7. I can't do that in 8 at the moment. So those capabilities are coming back. At the moment, they are unfortunately manual, but it has got I do like this new capability, which is the expiry. So obviously there was, you know, I've seen approvals that have been in a vRealize 7 for over 12 months, like going on 3 years, right? Because no one's actually ever approved it. Where this actually has an expiry. So I don't know why approve is the auto expiry decision. I'd probably have it as reject. But I think most organizations or anyone who uses that probably would have that. You could say how many days until it's either rejected or approved. And then, yeah, that's pretty much it. Content sources, we've got a couple of new ones. So we've got CodeStream pipelines. We can now have CodeStream pipelines. Now I think that's pretty cool because CodeStream has got a lot of integrations, a lot of plugins, and a lot of capability there. And you can almost have them as I would say a lightweight workflow capability, where, you know, you could deploy a whole environment, you could do a few things, you could deploy an environment and then do some testing, you could do a blueprint and do some testing on it to make sure everything's working properly. You know, it makes those sort of things a lot easier. So instead of offering up a blueprint as a catalog item, you offer up a CodeStream pipeline which deploys that blueprint but then does a lot of things around the periphery. That'd be cool. And then marketplace OVA templates. So this is to support the Bitnami marketplace, so you're able to easily import and ingest and put straight onto the catalog item those Bitnami OVAs to deploy. So the rest is the same. So not much different there. Right. So, you know, that's the main part. There is one I just remembered then in Orchestrator. Now I probably didn't, you would have seen it, but I didn't mention it. But this glorious thing is back right here, tree view. So obviously, for whatever reason, that wasn't in there to begin with. I don't know if others out there have had literally tens of thousands of workflows and actions, and some of them named the same. They're just in a different folder structure based on what they're doing. It was very, very hard to manage. So I'm really glad the workflows, the tree view is back. as well. And look, as I said, there's other little things like an SDK for the IPAM integration and a bunch of other cool little fixes around it, but that in itself is really the main part. As I said, the big takeaways from me is obviously that the different scripting languages now available to be used. And obviously the addition is probably my number one. The second one would be the addition of custom resources and custom day 2 actions. And the third one would be the addition of the approvals because they were completely missing previously. Anyway, it's been awesome to do this video covering on the main points of 8.1. Keep that automation going. Stay sane. I'll see you next time. Cheers, bye.